The Paradox of Blackness, Fascination, Fear, and the Study of African People by Jihad Zenith. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Few people in history have been studied as intensely as Africans and their descendants. For centuries, scholars, explorers, governments, physicians, and scientists sought to understand, classify, explain, and often control African people. This created a contradiction. While many claimed Africans were inferior, those same societies depended on African labor, borrowed African culture, admired African abilities, and invested enormous resources into studying black people. Interest in Africans existed long before modern science. Ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, and Arab historians wrote about African societies and peoples. However, the rise of European colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade transformed observation into systematic study. As millions of Africans were enslaved, many intellectuals sought theories that could justify slavery and colonial rule. One of the most influential figures was Samuel George Morton. In his 1839 work, Crania Americana, Morton measured hundreds of human skulls and concluded that Europeans possessed larger average cranial capacities than Africans. He argued that intelligence was linked to skull size. His work became a foundation of scientific racism, though later scholars criticized his methods and conclusions as biased. These efforts expanded into craniometry and anthropometry, fields that measured skulls, facial features, body proportions, and skin color. Researchers believed physical traits could reveal intelligence, morality, and social value. In many cases, the conclusions reflected the assumptions of the researchers more than the evidence itself. Another major figure was Francis Galton. In Hereditary Genius, 1869, he argued that intelligence and achievement were largely inherited. In 1883, he coined the term eugenics, promoting the idea that populations could be improved through selective breeding. His theories influenced policies across Europe and America and contributed to movements advocating racial hierarchy, immigration restrictions, and population control. By the early 20th century, eugenics conferences in London and New York brought together scientists and policymakers to discuss race, heredity, and social engineering. African Americans and other minority groups were often viewed through the lens of racial classification rather than individual human worth. Yet many researchers who promoted racial theories also acknowledged traits they considered exceptional among African populations. Observers frequently describe physical endurance, adaptability, athletic ability, creativity, rhythm, and resilience. This created a paradox. The same people described as inferior repeatedly demonstrated remarkable achievements despite slavery, segregation, and discrimination. Not all scholars accepted these conclusions. Psychologist Otto Kleinberg studied intelligence testing among black and white children and concluded that education, environment, and opportunity played major roles in performance. His findings challenged claims that intelligence differences were primarily racial. Anthropologist Ashley Montagu further criticized racial theories in his 1942 book Man's Most Dangerous Myth, The Fallacy of Race. He argued that race was largely a social concept and that claims of biological superiority lacked scientific support. His work helped shift scientific thought away from racial hierarchy. The study of African Americans also entered medicine. The Tuskegee syphilis study, conducted from 1932 to 1972, followed hundreds of black men who were not properly informed of their diagnosis and were denied available treatment. The study became one of the most infamous examples of unethical medical research in American history. Modern genetics has transformed the discussion. Rather than proving racial superiority, research has shown that Africa contains the greatest genetic diversity on Earth and represents humanity's deepest ancestral roots. These discoveries challenge many assumptions that earlier racial theories attempted to establish. The legacy of these studies remains complex. Some research expanded knowledge of human migration, ancestry, and disease, yet flawed theories also help justify slavery, segregation, discrimination, forced sterilization, and unequal treatment under the law. The history of studying Africans reveals a deeper lesson. Africans were often studied because they were viewed as different, feared because they could not be easily controlled, and admired because their accomplishments repeatedly contradicted attempts to diminish them. The Paradox of Blackness is not only a story about race, it is a reminder that knowledge can be used either to pursue truth or to defend power, depending on the intentions of those who wield it.